There is none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks after God. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. His name is legendary. Well, perhaps legendary isn't the most accurate choice of words. Perhaps a better choice of words would be infamous. His name is infamous. What he did, the sin that he committed, was so terrible, it has forever linked his name to such a sin. Nothing that will be done since his terrible sin will ever change the fact that when you think of what he did, his name invariably comes up as the perpetrator. It is believed by some historians that his name was actually quite popular in his day, meaning that people named their children the same name as this man's name. But after what he did, and how the connotation of betrayal, how the word traitor became so intertwined with this name, people quit naming their children this name. It is also believed that had he died even just a few months before the sin that he became infamous for, he would be a hero. He would be a hero among his people had he died before he had committed his sin. Many men have set to task to understand why he became a traitor, why he decided to betray the people whom he loved, at least the people whom he professed to love. Some say that he did it for money. He wasn't a wealthy man. He had not grown up a wealthy man. And perhaps it was the money that caused him to become a turncoat. Some say he did it for political motivations, personal political motivations. They say that he had been overlooked by the powers that be for promotion, for more attention. And because of that, he sought to get even. Some say the other aspect of the political idea was that he didn't like the way the battle was going. He didn't like the way the war was panning out, so he decided to act in a different way in hopes of provoking a different outcome than what he saw coming. Regardless of it, regardless of his motivations, there is no doubt that this man's name has become infamous. Not just here in this place and not just where he made his infamous decision, but many places all over the world. He is known as a traitor. In fact, in the United States, not long after his treachery, it was against the law to post, carve, or otherwise display his name. I am, of course, speaking of Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was a man who had been a general in the Continental Army, fighting alongside such a brilliant general even as George Washington. He, however, decided to betray the country whom he professed to love and agreed to hand over a military base to the British. However, before he could fully commit the act for which he became later known for, his correspondence was intercepted and it was discovered what he was going to do. The rest of his life didn't pan out like he had hoped. He had been given his sum of money, but how much is your reputation worth? Obviously, he could never go back to America, and he found out to his cost that when you turn from one side to the other, your new team won't just trust you offhand. If you're willing to turn your back on these people that you've been with, how can we trust you? Whom did you think I was speaking of before I named Benedict Arnold? Judas. It is believed at the same time, though, that Judas was a popular name among males at the time of his birth. And yet you do not know any Judases today. It isn't a name that pops up in that baby book when you're looking at potential baby names. We've been looking at that one. We had quite a discussion when we were coming up with my son's name, and I can be honest and say Judas was never in the final running of what we were going to name Ricky. But even Judas's treachery, even Judas's idea of wanting to either force the political change, force God's hand, or because he wanted money, for whatever was his ultimate motivation, he became somebody that will be known throughout history for what one terrible thing he did. But now the righteousness of God apart from the law is revealed, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Jesus Christ, by whom God set forth as a propitiation by his blood, through faith to demonstrate his righteousness, because in the forbearance of God had passed over the sins that were previously committed, to demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, and he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. We look back at what Judas did, and we can say, man, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine turning on Christ. I can't imagine being the one that would hand him over. Regardless of the motivation, I can't imagine being the one that would do that. And yet the fact that we are unrighteous, the fact that we have committed sin, the undeniable fact that we have fallen short of the glory of God puts us in that exact position. The fact that we are not holy, that we are not so spiritual that we cannot sin, yet we do sin, puts us in the situation where we have to turn Christ over to be put to death in our stead. The blood that was spilled on our behalf was spilled so that the traitorous act that we committed of rebellion through sin can be forgiven, and that my name and that your name will not be blotted out. It will not be remembered for something negative. It will be written in a book that the names of who's in that book will one day rejoice because their name is in that book, and it is remembered by God. As we eat and as we drink and as we share with one another, let's not think of ourselves more highly than we ought.